In a process of globalization that began centuries ago but has accelerated exponentially in the past 50 years, societies have become more interconnected. Modernization and developments in trade, transportation, and telecommunication technology have led to the flow and exchange of ideas around the world. This can give the impression of increasing accessibility, harmony, and homogeneity across and between previously distant or distinct economies and cultures.
我们不想要订羊奶，报纸也不用了。
我有些话想要跟郭董讲。
不行，他睡了。
324번 탈락.
병신 걸렸네.
Through globalized media and pop culture, trade, and migration, people from different societies and cultures come into contact. The way individuals and groups understand themselves and their cultures may shift in response. Elements of culture, such as technologies, healing, or artistic practices, products, aesthetics, symbols, and food, may spread as they are adopted outside of their culture of origin in a process known as cultural diffusion. This can lead to the creation of new syncretic hybrids that combine aspects from different cultural systems. One of the results of globalization is the existence of pluralist societies, where people from diverse cultural backgrounds live together. A multicultural approach to a pluralist society recognizes the legitimacy and equality of all cultures represented, which upholds mutual respect and tolerance for differences with the understanding that all may not share the same cultural assumptions nor endorse the same behaviors, ideas, and values.
When you look at any city in the UK, you can see that Britain is now a multicultural society. Walk down any high street and you'll see businesses and restaurants which show ethnic and cultural diversity. There's a huge ethnic mix in Britain. 8% of the population come from different ethnic groups. And over half of these people were born in the UK.
This multicultural approach may exist in ongoing tension with ethno-nationalist movements which seek to reestablish firm linguistic, ethnic, or religious divisions or hegemony.
Pledge allegiance.
The 77% is in Italy. This country is home to many young people who left Africa. They crossed the scorching Sahara. They braved the unpredictable Mediterranean, all in pursuit of a better life in Europe. Today we're asking if the life they're living here was worth the risk they took.
The main perspective in the life in Europe is the same as the life they call it in the hell.
In hell?
Say, because in example in Europe, everything based on document.
Documents, right.
And if you are not having documents, what are you going to do? Italian have a word called black job, which is lavoro nero.
Right.
That is what you are going to do. And you are going to work.
That? What is a black
Lavoro
job?
nero means work without contract. From 8, sometimes 7:30, up to 5 o'clock in the evening time, in this heat, and they are going to give you 25 euro.
How much is that?
25 euro without food.
You can't survive on that.
You cannot survive on that in Italy here, because if you are paying house rent.
The power to steer the course of globalization is not uniform, and its negative impacts are also unevenly felt. Discrimination and inequality still exist within pluralist societies. Diasporic communities forced to flee persecution, war, economic injustice, or climate change are often subject to structural and direct violence in their new home countries. Societies remaining on their traditional land can also feel the harmful effects of globalization. Colonial governments and neo-colonial corporations with outsized influence have ravaged natural resources and exploited indigenous peoples for maximized economic profit. While indigenous foragers, horticulturists, and pastoralists may have been in place for much longer than the existence of the state or corporation in power, they have typically been politically subordinated. Many pre-industrial cultures are in danger of extinction due to acculturation, the forced assimilation into a dominant culture, or ethnocide, the systematic destruction of an ethnic group.
My name is Virgil Red Cloud Good. I come to you from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, prisoner of War Camp 334. Reservation is a fancy word for concentration camp and where we are today. So I'm 6th generation descent of Red Cloud. Right now in 2021, we still have a lot of houses out there that don't have running water. We still have a lot of houses out there that don't have any plastics on the door, that don't have any glass on the windows.
As indigenous populations are dislocated or acculturated, cultural knowledge, which is disseminated orally and known only by members of a local group, is lost. This includes language, information about plants and animals, including medicines, strategies of land stewardship, and adaptive wisdom to living in harmony with an environment. When a culture dies or is radically changed by globalization, alternative ways of being in the world are also lost. Though many indigenous minorities may be interested in aspects of modernization and globalization, they also want to preserve their cultural knowledge and their way of being. Many seek ways they can accommodate both. Globalization in the new millennium thus poses a number of major challenges, including widening income disparities within and between nations, public health crises, climate change, and environmental devastation. How can anthropologists and anthropology help, particularly at a moment where some see the field as having been a part of the problem for so long?
It is a painful paradox for the field of anthropology that, while the discipline was developed to explore, illustrate, value, and learn from the diversity of human cultures and societies, the impact of its projects and praxis on the people being studied have at times been quite negative, sometimes devastatingly so.
Antropólogo llama papuí mi heite, wama ku kontaomi, wama ke estudiano mo oteo taomi heja. Ya temra wai kirayoma, wama ku mai, shori mi ham greko, kami yama otamo otemi kam kulipa.
The more you accomplish, the more jealousy you inspire. The more jealousy you inspire, the more vigorously you are attacked by your jealous competitors who've been outdone. And this tends to be stronger in a discipline like anthropology whereas there's absolutely no agreement about anything. They not only don't have standards of proof, they don't even want to agree on whether there's a real world or not. So given the lack of any real standards for settling issues, the attacks become more vigorous. And I think Napoleon Chagnon has the distinction of being the only anthropologist that's ever been accused of genocide.
Due to pre-existing colonial and racist power structures that enabled and funded ethnographic fieldwork and significant ethical missteps in the field, some people being studied have been stolen from, objectified, misrepresented, and harmed by their participation in ethnography. How can the field move forward?
So a quick word of intro about who we are. We are a consortium. We deep read on current scholarship on post-colonial theory, the decolonial turn, and theory building from the global south. We read works from marginalized communities in the global north and south and our critical interventions based on in-depth studies of marginalized groups.
There is a growing movement to decolonize anthropology. First articulated in the late 80s and early 90s by the Association for Black Anthropologists, this movement addresses the discipline's historic roots, where typically privileged white Westerners studied quote-unquote the rest of the world and used the research results to promote their own expertise in academia. Decolonizers envision an anthropology that still uses hallmark methodology, such as ethnography and participant observation, with an approach that considers the involvement, collaboration, and empowerment of the community they study.
We've been assigned in the global division of labor to study the other, the non-Western other, or the folk elements of the West. All right, but we have nativized those peoples and communities. We have objectified them as sources of raw materials or raw data. We have cheapened the intellectual labor that has been exercised in anthropological praxis of those communities by assigning Africans the task of being the objects of mining raw materials or being located in sites where cheap or cheapened labor, the labor of informants, but also the labor of professional anthropologists who very often have PhDs, but have been treated as though they are glorified field assistants. So this may sound almost stereotypic to many of you. You say, well, that's dated. That's the way it used to be. But I would say if you do a close reading of the writings, the accounts that Black anthropologists around the world have produced, also indigenous anthropologists and some other subaltern intellectuals, you see that things have not changed enough.
Three major aims of the decolonizing movement include dismantling previous hierarchies, amplifying voices of both formally trained anthropologists and other BIPOC cultural experts, and addressing the real-world impact of research. What does this look like? Dismantling hierarchies calls for a more egalitarian playing field in producing, studying, and sharing cultural knowledge, so students and professors, trained anthropologists and vernacular theorists, white and BIPOC, all have meaningful say and are all considered to be part of generating important knowledge that counts.
I think it's important for that BIPOC students can have a voice and feel represented and comfortable in their own schools.
As BIPOC students, we didn't feel represented in the school, and we didn't really feel like we were learning about our own cultures and histories, which is not really the best feeling.
The group wants to create a new ethnic studies course at their high school. It's a goal that has the support of the Boulder Valley School District.
Voices coming from outside urban Euro-American academic privilege can be amplified on campus by switching up what counts as required reading in the anthropology canon, recruiting and providing welcoming space for BIPOC students, and looking to anthropologists outside centers of academic power and indigenous authorities to steer broader research agendas. In the field, anthropologists can use participatory practices, including people in the community of study in a meaningful way when selecting topics, developing research methodology, and responding to findings. Forefronting the real-world impact of anthropological research above all means having accountability to your research community. That means the results of research should be accessible and beneficial to the people it's about, and that ultimately, the project should be in service of empowering local communities, not just advancing academic careers. It also means scrutinizing things like university funding to ensure research is being supported by ethical means.
The participatory and accountability ethic of fieldwork put forth by a decolonial approach has increasingly become best practice. My visual psychological ethnographic work is typically participatory, soliciting suggestions for shots and scenes, following participant narratives in film development, responding to feedback on rough cuts, and holding screenings and discussions with participants to address pressing issues in contemporary Indonesian society. For example, in 40 Years of Silence, my film about the mass killings of alleged communists in Indonesia in 1965, participants used filmmaking as an opportunity to address painful aspects of their past, even confronting people who had done harm to them on camera. The film has been folded into their activism, where simply discussing these events remains a courageous act. For our project on polygamy, in response to emergent narratives of domestic violence, our Balinese research participants and collaborators similarly urged the filmmaking team to embrace a more hands-on approach and to take a more activist stance.
Iya, dia kan nengil kan Bu, nengil kan tiang ko ampun. Langsung tiang pi plong tiang on kaplok napi plong ingat-ingat tai bat itu kada cara ada maling tiang sana. Cara nak maling sampai ke pukul.
In the long term, we have worked with ethnography participants and local activists to organize screenings and discussions to jumpstart conversations about domestic violence and women's empowerment. The project has since been screened for Indonesian Parliament and developed a long-term relationship with the Balinese gender equity and legal aid organization LBH APIC. Similarly, several of the participants in Afflictions, our series on mental illness in Indonesia, have attended film screening Q&As. They have also been interviewed about their experience of mental illness and social suffering for mainstream journalism outlets in Indonesia.
Globalization can seem abstract, almost too big to tackle. But through ethnography, anthropology can track the various tangible, local, and personal impacts of globalization, can acknowledge the resilience and creativity of local populations while illuminating new structures of domination and precarity. It can also resist globalization's detrimental effects by working from a more aware and reflective position that doesn't reproduce structures of exploitation and extraction. Anthropologists working in the field today show how an anthropological perspective is crucial to reparatively redressing past wrongs, proactively addressing the most pressing issues of our time, and innovating new, flexible, and interdisciplinary methods and techniques to meet the needs of our globalized societies.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more, here are some useful resources in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get your regular dose of anthrodorphins.